On a typical weekend at Our Lady of the Snows Catholic Church in Chicago, this man might baptize a few babies, preside at a wedding, then give the sermon at Sunday Mass.
Dear brothers and sisters, today...
His name is Franco Foti, and he's not a priest. He's a married layman, one who is part of a unique ministry within Catholicism called the diaconate.
The word deacon comes from diakonos, which means to be of service, and that's why we service everyone who comes here.
Only one priest is assigned to Our Lady of the Snows, which was once a parish of mostly Polish immigrants, but now includes a mix of Polish Americans, Hispanics, and Anglos. As a deacon, Foti performs many of the duties of a priest. However, celebrating Mass is a function reserved only for priests who are considered heirs to the original apostles.
On the day before he was to suffer, on the night of the Last Supper,
but Foti did have to step in recently to speak the words of consecration at communion, for Catholics the most sacred part of the Mass. That's because his pastor is on leave and the priest filling in doesn't speak English. There are currently about 18,000 deacons in the U.S. compared to 37,500 priests. Like Foti, most deacons are married and usually have careers outside the church. Foti quit his previous job as a computer analyst to work full-time at his parish because he felt he was needed there.
Once you become a deacon, you cannot just take your shirt or collar off and then you're no longer a deacon. Particularly in this parish, I have a very close relationship with the pastor, so we take turns sometimes to answer sick calls.
With a drastic drop in the number of men willing to commit to a celibate priesthood, married deacons have become crucial to carrying out the sacramental life of the church, as well as its charitable work.
Okay? Yeah.
This group of deacons, good with a hammer, drill, and level, is installing a laundry room in the basement of a home for women emerging from crisis.
We're not going to get there today, so...
Deacon John Vidmar is part of Hopes on the Way, a ministry that responds to crises and repairs and renovates church buildings. Deacon, you're not in your traditional deacon garb today. You're in very different clothing. How does that feel?
It's interesting. I would argue that this probably should be the normal garb for a deacon. Besides doing liturgical functions, we're also called to serve the poor and serve the people of God.
In the early church, male and female deacons preached. They handled the finances and ministered to the poor and the marginalized. In the Middle Ages, the role of deacons began to fade as the power of priests and bishops grew. In the 1960s, the Second Vatican Council restored the role of deacons, but only for men. Theologian Phyllis Zagano at Hofstra University on Long Island has written 6 books on women in the church. She says the New Testament refers to women deacons and mentions one by name, Phoebe, who appears in a letter of St. Paul to the Romans.
Women deacons ministered to sick women. Women deacons ministered to children. Women deacons assisted in the baptisms of new members, female members. If the Holy Father wants to have women to have some authority and some governance in the church, which he has said he does, the easiest way really would be to restore women to the diaconate, because the deacon is a cleric.
Until recently, the wives of deacons were required to take the same classes over 4 years as their husbands did to prepare for the diaconate.
We had the exact same training, 2 nights a week, 1 weekend a month, summer internships. I wrote every paper he wrote.
Maureen Garvey says most parishioners at Holy Cross Church in the Chicago suburbs consider her and her husband Kevin a deacon couple.
The only thing that was different was the day of ordination. And I had tears in my eyes when all the guys, they were called up and they left their wife and they're sitting in the pews.
Maureen has a degree in pastoral counseling, and Kevin is a retired Marine colonel. At Mass, Maureen often serves as a lector, reading passages from the Old or New Testaments.
Thus says our God.
But only her husband can stand beside the priest at the altar or preach a sermon on the gospel, something she often helps him to write.
As a father, as a friend,
I would love to be able to reflect on the gospel in a woman's voice. That's what I feel called to. And then I guess if we could do baptisms and weddings together, that would be lovely. I don't feel a need to do that by myself. We're a team.
At the parish level and just practically, I would love to have help, and women would be awesome.
It's the breaking of the bread, the way I think it probably really happened.
If women are allowed to enter the diaconate, Cynthia Bounds says she'll be at the head of the line. Bounds worked at a Catholic seminary, has a master's degree in divinity, a certificate in spiritual formation, and is married to a deacon.
Women often are mothers like me or a grandmother. We have a sensitivity to listening to people, to perceiving things. And I'm not saying that men don't. But women, we come to the world in a slightly different way.
We were in the classes together. There were things you should bring up that as men we didn't see. And good men, I mean, good classmates that do amazing work, but we didn't see.
It's not about self. It's not about being on the altar. It's about the gift you give to others of yourself.
To underscore the fine line Bounds currently must walk as an aspiring deacon, the pastor at the parish where her husband is a deacon would not allow the couple to be videotaped ministering together at the church.
Quite frankly, I think there's a fear based on some of the people who decide our course of events about opening it up to women. Will they be replaced, displaced?
Sylvia Foti is one deacon's wife who says she has no desire to become a deacon herself and isn't sure female deacons are a good idea.
So I'm worried that this might be another trend or another fad. It's like a push from feminism to become an ordained minister, and I'm concerned about that. I don't know. I haven't fully embraced it and I haven't fully rejected it.
The young man goes up to Jesus.
Like some Catholics, Foti wonders if female deacons ultimately will open the door to women priests. Zagano, the theologian, says that's not likely.
I find no history of women ordained as priests. I think that if people say that if you can ordain a woman a deacon, then you can ordain a woman a priest, I think you're actually arguing not only against history, but you're arguing against the teaching of the church.
La pace sia con voi.
Being a deacon is currently a step on the way to priesthood for celibate men, but married men who become deacons are part of what's called the permanent diaconate. That means they will always be deacons. In a rule some hope will change, married deacons whose wives predecease them cannot remarry. After increasing for several decades, the number of men entering the permanent diaconate has begun to decline, despite a growing need.
We just had a diaconate convocation last weekend, and the number of deacons who passed away was greater than those we ordained this year. So I believe the diaconate might have the same issues as the priesthood. Blood of Christ.
Still, Garvey and other deacons say theirs is an extraordinary ministry.
94. Okay, well, I'm going to give you a...
They say deacons are often better equipped than priests to relate the faith to everyday struggles people encounter.
Some of the compliments after church, the question I asked, some guys said, "Boy, you really made me think." And I mean, what's better than that? That, you know, I was honest. I was sharing my struggles.
I do know that the diaconal service concept means a lot to me, and it's very important.
The presence of women deacons, if allowed, may breathe new life into this ancient ministry. Until just a few decades ago, girls were not allowed to be altar servers. Now they are a familiar presence on the altars of most parishes. Can women deacons be far behind?
Maureen, blood of Christ.
For Religion and Ethics News Weekly, I'm Judy Valente in Chicago.
Blood of Christ.